personal change, mindset change, physical change, organizational change. Change is at the root of everything. Because like I was saying before, going back to the evolution, human, animal stuff, change is hard and we don't want to do it because change is energy expensive, right? Maintaining the status quo is the lowest energy thing that we can do, meaning it takes the least amount of calories, it takes the least amount of friction. So anything that is outside of the status quo inherently takes more energy. And again, evolutionarily, we are bred to save energy at all turns because if a lion comes, I need all my energy stored up so that I can run away. If a famine comes, I need all of my energy stored up so that I can survive the winter. So again, we have bred into us save energy, and change inherently spends energy. So again, those two things are at a head with each other. So that's why anything that you are not doing that you want to be doing, we know is going to be hard. It's like people will be like, well, it's just so hard, as if that were ever an option for it not to be hard. Because if it were easy, it would already be done. The easy is the stuff that you have already. There's a reason you don't have something, and that's because it's hard, and that's because you resist it, and that's because everything in your body is telling you, watch one more episode of Netflix, don't go to the gym. Order in, don't cook food. Don't ignore that email, don't reply to it right now. And like whatever the thing is, it all lies on the same bedrock, which is simply it takes change. It takes more effort than I'm doing right now. And that is something that I'm always going to have a literal biological aversion to.
Welcome to today's episode of Unleash Thyself. I am your host, Konstantin Morun, and today we're joined by Paul Levitin, a board licensed health and wellness coach, certified personal trainer, behavior change specialist, and nutrition coach. With a decade of experience in the fitness and nutrition industry, Paul's passion extends beyond the physical. He dives deep into the mental aspects of health and wellness, including mindset, motivation, and personal growth. In today's conversation, we delve into personal transformation and mindset. We discuss resilience, building better habits, and the underlying framework Paul recommends for change. We'll also explore how our brains can hinder our growth, not out of malice, but from an instinct to protect us. Prepare yourself for an enlightening conversation that's sure to leave a lasting impression. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Unleash Thyself, the podcast that inspires and empowers you to unleash your full potential. I am thrilled to welcome Paul Levitin to the show. Paul, we can't wait to hear more about the experiences and insights that have led you to where you are today and your unleashed moment, the moment you knew you are on your own path to becoming the best version of yourself. Paul, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for everything that's to come as well.
Absolutely, Paul. So tell us a bit about your journey. I know you're into health and wellness. Have you been like that all your life ever since you were a child?
No, definitely not. So, I, as a profession, was a personal trainer and a nutrition coach for almost 10 years. And whenever people hear that, or during that time when I would meet people, people often assume that they're like, oh, you must have, played sports or been into, this type of stuff or been athletic since a kid. But it really wasn't that. It was something that I came to kind of accidentally in my later years, around 20, 21, 22, around a little after college. I really came into fitness as a job because I just needed a job. But through that, I became a personal trainer, and through personal training, I came to love health and wellness because I saw the benefits that it had for people, for both myself and for others. And I realized how powerful of a tool that it was, beyond just looks and beyond just weight and things like that, but how health and fitness and that type of thing was helping people, how I could personally affect and help people. So I really then dove into it much more intently, where in the beginning, it was just kind of a thing that I needed a job and the job was there. So I took it. It became my passion as I grew into it.
Oh, that's an awesome story, Paul. And I love when people just stumble into something they turn into a career after, right? And I think for a lot of us, works out that way. I was very similar to some of the adventures I had earlier in my life. But let me ask you this: when it comes to your vision for the future and what you're doing right now, do you see yourself on this path? pretty much for life, and expanding on what you've built so far, expanding of all your knowledge you have to help as many people as possible?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that my passion is helping people, but no, in the sense that it's changed in what that looks like. So, although I started with fitness, then nutrition, it's kind of like a natural progression, right? With fitness, most people that I would work with wanted to lose weight. That's just the reality of the world that we live in. We live in a world where it's very easy to gain weight and pretty hard to lose weight, and people need help with that. So that was where I was working. So then, with that being the goal, it would be obvious to me, it's like, okay, I need to learn about nutrition, food, that type of thing, because that's what really helps people lose weight or gain weight or whatever it is. But then through that journey, and again, both personally and professionally, I started to realize that there was another missing piece, and that was the mental side of things. Because why is it that I could tell someone the perfect workout and they wouldn't do it? Why is it that we all know what to eat to lose weight, and yet people struggle so much to do it? So clearly, it wasn't just learn how to build workouts, learn how to create a diet, because if that were the case, the problem would have been solved 50 years ago, because we know all of this stuff factually. There's no guesswork anymore. How do I lose weight? People think there is, like, people are so confused about it. Like, we know what to do. Same thing with exercise. Like, it's very simple to build a decent exercise routine. Now the question is, can you stick to it? So that's what I became very interested in, was human motivation, behavioral science, psychology, and the why behind the what. Why do we do what we say why do we do the things we do? And more specifically, more interesting to me, why don't we do the things that we say that we want to do? Right? Why can someone say, I want to be an entrepreneur, but every day come home and turn on Netflix instead of work on their business? Why can people say, I want to lose 50 pounds, but every day drive to McDonald's and eat another meal rather than eating a salad? Or, the list goes on and on. So through my personal journey and my professional career, I started to branch away from purely fitness, because again, to me, that was a question that was already answered, and I wanted to be more in the stuff that was like really interesting to me. So now I work with people on mindset, motivation, and building self-confidence, which in a roundabout way is still in the same world, right? It's still general wellness, and health is a part of that, because I do think having a healthy body is a part of the overall equation to having a good life. But I don't think it is as simple as me standing over someone and telling them to do some push-ups, or me telling you to eat more broccoli and less this or that or the other thing. There's something deeper there.
Absolutely. And I love how you approached it. I mean, I've been someone that's been on my own journey of fitness and losing weight, and it's been a roller coaster at times. And you're absolutely right. I know all the information. So why are we, and myself included, not doing it? So what have you found on this journey when you had that realization, the wait a second, all this information is available, but we're not doing enough with it?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it, right? And I call this is the human problem, and this is at the crux of everything. And this is why, my podcast, my brand is just called Happy Healthy Human, and human is the last word, because this is human stuff. So even the most disciplined, most motivated, most whatever people still deal with this stuff. They might not seem that way outwardly because they have the result at the end, but that doesn't make it any easier for some people, right? And the thing is that, again, this is just human nature. And to go a level deeper beyond human nature, it is animal nature, right? And all humans we are animals, right? And so we have inside of us millions of years of evolution of survival that is built into our DNA. And we have that is fighting against the last 50 years of technological advances that have put us in a place that our body and brain don't know how to cope with. Meaning, we are like, food is a very simple example, right? We are genetically predisposed to crave certain taste: salty, sweet, fatty, because there's a genetic reason for that. I mean, there's an evolutionary reason for that. Salty and sweet and fatty, these are tastes that in nature don't exist much, right? Sweet is found very seldom in nature. It's found in fruit, it's found in berries. Salty, fatty is found in an animal. So we crave that, so that if you were 5,000 years ago, a hunter-gatherer, and you came across a berry patch, it tasted good to tell your brain to eat more of it, so that you would eat more, because you don't know when the next time you're going to come across that berry patch again. When you kill a buffalo, you eat the meat, you eat it, you want to eat all the meat because you need all those calories, because you don't know when the next time your kill is going to come. Now, fast forward to today, where you have McDonald's and Domino's and Uber Eats will literally fly a drone to your house with a hamburger, and your brain has not caught up with that. Your brain still gets those electrical impulses of, I feel good when I get this stuff. So we have this internal battle inside of us, and that is stacking the deck against you in your journey to lose weight. So people have this thing where like, oh, well, you just need to be more motivated, or you just need to try harder. Like people who are overweight just need to try, just need to buckle down. It's like, it's not that easy. If it were that easy, everyone would do it and that would be done, right? You're literally fighting against human nature. So that's the conversation that I like to have, because I think that's important, because people can hear, like people who don't hear this stuff often give up because they think they're broken. They look at everyone else. Everyone else can lose weight, but I can't. This is so hard for me. There must be something wrong with me. But that's not the case. The fact of the matter is, it's hard for everyone, and that just shows up differently. It's hard for me to lose weight, just like it's hard for you to lose weight, but I might have better genetics. And even though it's hard for me, it still comes off me easier. It might be hard for me to lose weight, but I worked in a gym for 10 years where I worked out 3 hours a day. So people will look at me and be like, oh, well, why can't I be like Paul? Well, it's like, you don't have the life that I live. So there's so many other factors that go into this. And then again, I'm just using food and weight loss as an example, but you can say the same thing about business. You can say the same thing about relationships. You can say the same thing about anything. All of it comes down to what we are built to do and what the environment that we're currently in and how those things don't match up.
I love that, Paul, and I resonate with 100%. And there is a lot of science nowadays to prove exactly everything you said. What we've been built as humans to do, and what society is unfortunately led us to a place where food is so abundant for a lot of people in the Western world, in North America, parts of Europe, and otherwise. And it's so easy to overindulge and overeat. And because it's sending those chemical signals to your brain, it's hard to fight it. So, how do you work with your customers nowadays to fight the human nature?
Yeah, so a lot of it is just around education. And that's why most of what I do are courses and coaching, because it's my opinion and my hope that once you understand this stuff, you have at least a fighting chance of winning against it, right? It's like I just said, the deck is stacked against you. You are fighting an uphill battle no matter what. But most people are fighting an uphill battle with blindfold on, and they don't know that they're fighting it. And again, that causes them to get discouraged and it causes them to quit. Because the fact of the matter is, again, anyone can lose weight if they do it for long enough, right? Everyone has this story of they tried a diet and then it didn't work for 3 months and then they gave up. I tried to start a business and I did it for a year and then I gave up. I tried to start a relationship and then, after 6 months, we just couldn't do it anymore. It's like, you only lose when you give up. It's a cliche, right? But it is the truth. Any diet works if you do it for long enough. Again, it might take me 3 months and it might take you 3 years, but eventually you'll get there. Same thing with lifting weights. Same thing again with a business. Some people get lucky and their business takes off 6 months in. Some people, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. But the point is that you can only win if you're in the game. So what I do with my clients is coach them through how to be more confident in themselves so that they can persevere and continue on the journey when it gets hard. Because when it's easy, right? That's the thing. Everyone loves, I did nutrition coaching for a long time where people would tell me about their food and tell me what they ate the week before and stuff. And people love to tell me, Paul, I ate a salad and I had protein and I worked out this week. And it's like, all right, cool. And then all of a sudden I wouldn't hear from them for a while, a couple of days. I'm reaching out. Hey, what's going on? Where you been? What's going on? And then oh, well, man, I fell off Friday night. We went out to dinner and that turned into dinner and drinks. Then I felt like shit on Saturday. So I just ate like shit all weekend. And then on Monday, I just felt like I had thrown it all away. So I just kept going. And it's like, that's the part that we have to work on. Like you get so high on the highs don't matter. Like the good parts are already good. When you're in the zone and you're working and you're banging out business and you're banging out emails and you're doing the stuff you need to do for your business and you're working for 8 hours a day, it's like, that's cool. That's great. What we have to work on is to get you out of the slump when you go into a Netflix binge for 3 days and ignore all your emails and ignore the things that you have to do. So all my job is to get you out of your own way and to stop with the cycles of self-sabotage that people find themselves in. And again, that comes through education. It comes through support, accountability, coaching. And my hope is, again, just when you allow someone to see it, that it makes it impossible, but it makes them at least have a fighting chance to be able to get out of their own way before they mess themselves up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that, and I can resonate with it 100%. It also sounds like when you're talking about providing the right knowledge, providing the right information, it also sounds like a big part of the battle is awareness of the real problem.
100%. It's interesting you bring that up. I teach in all my courses what I call the change loop. So the change loop is AEA, which is awareness, education, and then action. So the first step is awareness, right? You can't change a problem that you don't know exists. You can't fix a problem that you don't know exists. So awareness is just bringing it to the light. So that's step one. Next step is education. Okay, I know the problem exists, but now what do I do about it? Okay, like I know that this is an issue, okay, but I don't know how to solve it. So then you have to read the books, you have to get the coaching, you have to listen to the podcasts, you have to watch the YouTubes, whatever it is. But all of that doesn't do anything without the last step, which is action, right? So you can have all the awareness in the world, and there's plenty of people to do, and they're so educated, and they read all the books, and they do all the seminars, and they do all the courses, but they never put it into action. And that's the last step. But it's a loop because when you do that, you just find yourself back at step one with awareness of a new problem. And that's how change works. That's how growth works. There's no end to this stuff. You just find one thing, work on it, get better. Then there's a new thing, and work on it, get better. Then there's a new thing. And it just goes on like that. But awareness, without that, it's impossible to change. Again, you're just walking around in the dark.
Yeah, and I love that. Uh, on a professional level, I specialize in organizational change management, which is all about change at an organizational level, like changing software, changing processes. And it's interesting to see the similarities between the two worlds. Because if I were to get you, Paul, to change what email provider you use, I would use similar approaches, right? I first need to get you aware of why the change is needed and what the change is, then give you the knowledge, you put it into action. And in the professional world, we have an extra step, which is the reinforcement piece. So you've been doing the change for a while, but you want to continue reinforcing it. So when, let's say, you stop the coaching because you're far along down a path, you want to continue to have those reinforcements show up in your life. And I wonder how we apply that into this, like into your model. Where is the reinforcement piece? Is it when a new problem is being identified and you become aware of it, or do you actually incorporate it as part of the action step?
Well, yeah, I think that's great. Reinforcement is totally a key, and I think that that's it. It's both, right? It's a part of the repeating the cycle because again, it's kind of like a constant check and assess, check and assess, check and assess, right? What am I doing? Is it going well? Am I doing the right thing? And it's also an understanding that, like I said, there is no real endpoint to this stuff, right? So the reinforcement, a lot of what we're talking about, especially in the world of, again, psychology, any health, fitness, mental health, are habits. So that's the whole thing is that when we're talking about action, a lot of that is building the habit. So that doesn't happen one time. That happens with constant repetition. And that's part of the education piece as well, right? It's like if and if we're trying to change something that is a habit that's deeply instilled in us, taking that action one time doesn't do it, right? That's going to the gym one time doesn't do anything. Listen to one podcast, reading one book, writing one page. It's like inherent in the action is that it is a repeated, recurring action most of the time, because that's usually the stuff that we're trying to do. Is stuff that we have to repeat. Anyone can do something once, right? It's the same thing, right? Anyone can diet for a few weeks. Anyone can go to the gym for a few months. Anyone can work on their business for a little while. The secret sauce is in the consistency of the action.
Yes, absolutely. And I love how you apply this to everything, not just the fitness or the nutrition world, because it's about everything you do in life, even in your job, right? How do you show up every day at work?
Right,
Do it consistently. And most of us do, right? A lot of us do that. So how can we take that and apply it into our personal life
right. And
and
that's
not
why
make it feel like another job?
Right, exactly, and that's why, like I said, why I stepped away from the fitness piece specifically in the nutrition, and because I think all of these principles are deeper than that. I think they're more important than just losing weight or just a diet or something like that. I think these are core principles. Just like you said, this applies to the same to your career because what is at the root of all of this is simply change, and that's why personal change, mindset change, physical change, organizational change is at the root of everything. Because, like I was saying before, going back to the evolution, human, animal stuff, change is hard and we don't want to do it because change is energy expensive, right? Maintaining the status quo is the lowest energy thing that we can do, meaning it takes the least amount of calories, it takes the least amount of friction. So anything that is outside of the status quo inherently takes more energy. And again, evolutionarily, we are bred to save energy at all turns because if a lion comes, I need all my energy stored up so that I can run away. If a famine comes, I need all of my energy stored up so that I can survive the winter. So again, we have bred into us to save energy, and change inherently spends energy. So again, those two things are at a head with each other. So that's why anything that you are not doing that you want to be doing, we know is going to be hard. And that, again, this is like the type of things I have to explain to my clients. It's like people will be like, well, it's just so hard, as if that were ever an option for it not to be hard. Because if it were easy, it would already be done. The easy is the stuff that you have already. There's a reason you don't have something, and that's because it's hard, and that's because you resist it, and that's because everything in your body is telling you, watch one more episode of Netflix, don't go to the gym, order in, don't cook food, don't ignore that email, don't reply to it right now. And like whatever the thing is, it all lies on the same bedrock, which is simply it takes change. It takes more effort than I'm doing right now. And that is something that I'm always going to have a literal biological aversion to.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely see that. And I love the way you explained that. Someone recently explained something else to me in a similar vein is like when you're making a change to yourself, regardless if it's a mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical change, you're essentially starting a process that's going to kill off a part of you that you may not like, but it's still killing off something. And that something will put up a fight. No one will give up and say, I'm going to die right now. It's going to put up a fight. And when you're explaining it, it sounds to me like that's pretty much what's happening, right? Because you're having this change that's built into us that we want to preserve energy. But it's also on an emotional level. It's like we are changing because we're going to go to the gym now more often, because we need to cook food at home. Friction will happen with what? Groups of friends, coworkers, perhaps, loved ones, or maybe your routine that you've settled in for so many years already.
Yeah, 100%. And again, this goes back to evolution too, because what that is our biological need for safety, right?
Yes.
Safety is what is known right now, right? Again, I always equate things back to like caveman days. Inside the cave is safe. I know what's inside the cave. Me, my family, I have fire. Outside of the cave is the unknown. That's where tigers exist and snakes, and people go out for a hunt and they never come back. So change is everything outside of the cave. What I have right now, this exact life, this exact body, that's safe because I already have it. There's no risk in trying to get more because I have this already. Even though there's the logical fallacy in that is that there actually is a lot of risk, because the risk in staying the same is that you actually die faster, you don't get the things that you want, you don't go out for the blah, 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 blah. Like we know that logically, but what I'm talking about is the feeling inherently inside of us. We avoid this stuff because again it feels safe, but that's an illusion because it's not true safety, right? So again, getting away from the fitness examples, the business example, staying at your job that you hate instead of going out and trying to start your own business, or going for another job that would give you more joy or something like that. It feels safe because I have this job now, right? Money in the bank counts. There's no risk there. And going out and starting my own business, I would be giving up a stable paycheck. I would be giving up, my health insurance. What happens if what happens if no one buys my product? There's a lot of unknowns out there, and unknowns don't feel safe. So in that moment, our emotional brain says, stick with what you have. A bird in the hand is better than two in the bush, whatever that saying is, right? It's like, what I have is safe. But the reality is, long term, you're going to die a slow, painful death of hating yourself and going crazy and all this other stuff. So it's like, it's not true safety, but it feels like it. And that's enough to trick us into complacency.
Absolutely, yes. And I agree with you 100%. I've seen it in my life in many aspects as well. Over the years, you pick the easy choice, so the choice that keeps the status quo, like you said earlier, which in the short term feels good, but in the long term, it's rarely good. So we need to find what's easy in the short term and also good in the long term, or at least something that's maybe not as easy as pleasant in the short term, but will give us great benefits in the long term?
Yeah, so my whole theory, this is what everything that I do is based on, is literally that, is what's easy and what's hard. And the answer, that I've found, that I haven't found this rule to not apply yet. I'm still waiting for someone to show me an example where this rule does not apply, is to do the hard thing. So always we come to a fork in the road where the options are an easy thing and a hard thing. And always our natural gut inclination is going to be to do the easy thing because, again, that is biology, that is evolution, that is safety. But always what we're actually supposed to do is the hard thing, because that is how growth happens, and that is how we challenge ourselves, and that is how we get outside of our comfort zone. But again, this goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning. That is a natural fight that is always going on, meaning I'm always supposed to do the hard thing, but I always want to do the easy thing. And and this can be too confusing because it's not just about easy versus hard, right? So again, going back to the business example, right? Say the CEO who's working 14-hour days to, build the business, and he's like, go, 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 type A, and he never goes home to see his family, and like he's burning out. It's like he's like, well, I am doing hard things. Like I'm working 14-hour days. I don't sleep. I don't see my family. It's like, well, the hard thing, your fork in the road, is that's your easy thing, because again, that's what you're already doing. Your hard thing is slowing down. Your hard thing is saying no to that extra meeting and saying, hey, I'm actually not going to go on that weekend trip. I'm going to spend time with my family. Because again, if we're already doing it, it's easy for us. The hard thing is the thing that we are not yet doing. So again, same thing with someone who is always going to the gym, to the extent that, again, they're not going to social engagements, or they're not enjoying time with their family, or they won't go out to dinner or something like that because they're so tuned into their body. They're like, well, I go to the gym every day. That's super hard. It's like, well, yeah. But it's clearly not that hard that you don't do it, right? So like if you're doing it every day, how hard could it be? What's hard for you is taking a break, taking a breather. So when I say, like, that's why, when I say it's your hard thing. It's whatever the thing that you're not doing, that you feel that aversion to, that when you think of it, you're like, it's scary to you. That's this very signal that tells me that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes. And I love that, Paul, 100%. And what you touched on there as well is this idea that everything is relative. We all have our own lenses on our own interpretation of reality and what's happening around, which means that what's hard for me might be easy for you and vice versa. And it's important for us to realize that. And for example, let's say someone sees you in the gym X amount of hours a week, losing X amount of weight, and they're like, oh, it's easy for Paul, so it's going to be easy for me. That's what I believe social media and a lot of the news outlets today are failing society as a whole, because they are pushing this agenda in a way where, like, not a pushing agenda, but promoting things that seem easy for a select group of people, and then packaging it as if it's something that everyone can do. And yes, you could do it, but your easy is going to look a lot different. Your hard is going to look a lot different. And people win the lottery all the time. But what's the percentage of those winning the lottery? And to your business example, perfect example there as well. Some people will be successes overnight, but those are the exceptions to the rule. So how can you do those things that challenge you so then you can keep learning and growing and growing?
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. And I mean, we could talk about social media and TV and stuff like that. I do think that's problematic, but I think it's, what's important is, again, as you just said, that we realize that we're all different. And that is the thing that frustrates so many people, because we are all different, we all have different answers to the same questions. And that's what people don't like, right? It's the whole thing, right? Just tell me what to do and I'll do it, right? What is the path that I have to follow to get the result? So that's why the gurus come online and they go, hey, this is what I did to lose 100 pounds. This is what I did to take my business from 0 to 6 figures in 6 months. This is what I did. And just follow the path that I laid out and you'll do it too. Except that that's not how it works. And anyone who has followed the Instagram guys workout, or the Instagram girls booty workout, or the online guru's business plan, and paid the money and did the thing and put in the work and then gotten to the end of the thing and not gotten the result, knows that it's just not like that. And the lottery example is a perfect example, right? People literally win the lottery every day. Like there is a lottery winner every single day. That does not mean you should go out and play the lottery. And there's so much luck. And again, the reason this is frustrating is, again, I always come back to human evolution and biology, because it is an energy thing, right? Having a set answer saves energy. If I do A, then I will do B. If I do A, then B will happen. That if A, then B. If I put in this energy into A, everything is a cost benefit relationship to my brain. If I pay to do this workout with energy, what do I get out of it? If I'm guaranteed weight loss, then that feels good. But if you're telling me like, oh, if you do this, potentially you could lose weight, but also maybe you won't. And also kind of in between that you might, oh, if you work on your business, like, yeah, you could make a bunch of money, but you also could lose all your money, and you also could just, nothing could happen, and you could just waste a bunch of time. That is the opposite of everything we've been talking about. It's energy expensive. It's unsafe, right? Safety is understanding where I'm going to be. It's having a set endpoint. So when we have all these things that are not, there's no finite answer, it becomes very frustrating. And then the safe bet becomes, again, to stay with what you have, right? So I tell this example a lot. It's like, if I came to you right now with a contract that said, hey, if you, whatever you want to do, whatever you're struggling with, whatever your habit that you're struggling with, say it's, I want to stop smoking cigarettes, right? And I come to you with a contract and I say, sign this contract. If you have not had a cigarette in the next year, 365 days, there's $1 million in this briefcase. You're going to get it once you sign this contract. A year from now, I guarantee you will have smoked no cigarettes, right? Because you have a finite guaranteed answer that you can look at and be like, there's a reason for all of this.
Yeah.
But when you just have some like, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, our brains don't like that. And they want a definite answer in a world where no definite answers exist. So again, these are the type of things that this is what I talk about with my clients, because this is the type of understanding that I need you to have if I want you to have a chance at winning in the long run. Because what I can't do is give you one answer, right? I'm not the guru. Like I said, I can't just say, hey, follow this exact plan and it will work for you. That doesn't work. That's a lie. But what I can do is tell you these truths, these human, literal truths of the universe that I know to be true. And if you can live your life in such a way that plays by these rules, then you will have the best chance possible of coming out on top.
Yeah, I love that, Paul. And you're absolutely right. And it sounds to me it's all about challenging essentially your thought process at this point, or the thought process of those you work with. Because if I'm thinking a certain way, it's based on, let's say, my ego or my learned behaviors. And we know also, biologically speaking, and looking back at history, that fear is something that, of course, leads our life, because we don't want to be eaten by the lion, like in the example you gave, right? We don't want to step off or step on something that will injure us, so now we can provide for our family. So when you're leading from a place of fear, well, change looks very hard, looks very scary in every aspect of life. And I used to be someone that led from a place of fear very, very often. And for me, what really worked, and it sounds like it's exactly what you're talking about, is the idea that in every decision, you can lead with fear or you can lead with love. And when I say love, I'm talking about everything that comes with love, compassion, empathy, and everything else. But looking at it from the positive side of things versus the negative. And now you can turn a tough decision into a fairly easy one. Like, do I want to go down the same path that's going to cause me the same pain I had dealt with? Or can I go on a path that's going to cause something unknown to happen, but likely better than the outcome of the other path? Because I know that I'm doing a harder thing and I'm leading from a place of positivity, and I can create something out of it.
Yeah, I mean, love is the most powerful thing that there is, and positivity. I tell people all the time, you can't hate yourself forward, right? So this is the person who is trying to, again, hate themselves skinny and just be so angry at themselves that they're like, "Oh, I'm so disgusting. I need to lose weight." Or the person who wants to make a ton of money, but it's for a bad reason so that they can make someone else look bad, or finally get one over on their ex or something like that. It's like, I've never seen that win as a long-term success strategy. You just because it's not motivating in the long run. In the long run, motivation dwindles. We know that, right? Like these things, like if I'm just like going for when I'm motivated, I have to want to do it for a real reason. And hate and anger and that kind of stuff can be a great fuel for a short period of time. It's like rocket fuel. It burns really really hot, really fast, but then a rocket shoots up and then it crashes right back down, right? Whereas like love and positivity are like a hot air balloon. Like it might take a while, but it's going to just float you there safely, and you're going to get to enjoy the views, and you're going to love the ride as you go. But that's the whole thing, is like, how can you find that for the journey that you're on? And it can't be created, because a lot of people have this thing, the start with why. I talk about that a lot. And the very first episode of my podcast is literally start with why, right? That's the title of the very first episode, like 3 years ago. It's my most listened to episode. I send it to every client I've ever worked with, because it's true. You need to know why you're doing this. Again, this stuff is going to be hard, but at the same time, it can't be manufactured. It can't just be something like, oh, well, I need a why, so I'm just going to make it up, because that's no more real than anything else. Something will call to you. And if it does, that journey is much more easy to go on, right? That's why the entrepreneurs, it's very different from an entrepreneur who tries to make their business into a social thing versus someone who starts their business or starts their entrepreneurial journey because they're called to. And that is usually the one that's successful, versus some corporation that just tries to tack on some social justice at the end because they're like, oh, you're supposed to have a why behind the what. So, that positivity is an integral piece, because the negativity is going to weigh you down eventually.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And again, it goes back to what you're saying, finding your why. The way I see it as well is finding your mission, what drives you, what motivates you, what brings you happiness in the end. And then follow your heart and go down that path. And that's something that I've come to realize in the last couple of years myself. And that's how I came to create this podcast, is this idea of doing something out of your heart rather than your mind. Like you said, oh, I'm going to tackle this problem. Because before this podcast about personal growth and self-discovery and spirituality, I wanted to start podcasts about, let's say, financial topics. But that was driven by a monetary incentive. I'm like, oh, if I'm going to make those videos, I can get more money, I can buy another shiny toy. And to your example, if you do those things, your chance of success are very small, because it's almost like you have blinders on, you have a target or an expectation, so you're not allowing yourself to see all the variables, all the potential opportunities that lie around you. And you're leading from a place of fear, like in my case, it'd be a fear of not having enough and being looked down upon, or a fear of not being accepted because I don't have X amount of toys or money.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's a big word that I'm huge on. I teach entire courses on this word, the word expectations. And that really is everything, right? When you come, exactly that, right? When I come into this with expectations, it doesn't matter if they're positive or negative expectations. I'm backing myself into a corner, because if I have expectations, that means that I have an expectation of how this should work out. And that means every other way that it might work out is wrong. And the way that I expected it to work out is right. And we know that the universe is infinite possibilities, and that the chances of the one possibility that you are expecting being the one result versus all of the infinite billions of other possibilities is pretty low. Whereas if I can just go into this where I'm doing it because I want to put out good energy into the universe, or just because I want to be a good person, or I want to live my life in such a way, I have no expectation of how it's going to unfold, because I'm doing it purely for the joy of doing it. And then no matter how it unfolds, it doesn't matter, because I've already won by doing the thing that I'm trying to do.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that, because I later in life I realized as well the expectation piece, because I used to go into any type of encounter with a preconceived expectation. And that had to do a lot with, for example, my learned behavior from growing up in Eastern Europe, for example. But then it also was built up upon when I moved to North America, and you start chasing the American dream and you start doing things that society just does. And then you go on the hamster wheel. And like you said, you're just doing the easy things. You're doing the things that everyone else is doing, but you're expecting different results, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly right. That's what they call the definition of insanity, right? Is doing the same things and expecting different results. And again, I teach courses about this. It's the shoulds, right? What I should do. It should be like this. I should have done this. I should have got this result, right? I've been working out for 6 months. I should have lost 20 pounds by now, but you didn't. So clearly you shouldn't have, right? Like you lost 5 pounds and maybe someone else did this workout and lost 20 pounds, but you didn't. Oh, I've been working on my business. Or again, the guru, if you do all of this work, you should have a multi-million dollar business. But plenty of people do all of that work and they don't, right? So we have to understand that shoulds are not real. But again, to our brain, to our body, to our mind, they feel real. And this is the issue, right? Because when I have that feeling of, hey, I did all this work and I should have this result, to my brain, I feel like I've been robbed. Because if I feel like I should have something, it doesn't feel like something I should have gotten. What it feels like to me emotionally, physically, spiritually, it feels like something that I had already, and because I was expecting it, I had already built it up in my brain and it was taken from me. Right. So if I set out on again a 6 month workout to lose 50 pounds, let's say, and then I say, okay, in 6 months from now, I'm going to have lost 50 pounds. I have that expectation built into my head. 6 months go by, I only lose 10 pounds, which is still great, right? You've lost that's a great rate of weight loss. 50 pounds was actually unrealistic, but we're not going to get into that. The point was you lost, but because it's 10 and not 50, you not only do you feel disappointed, you feel robbed. It feels like I in my whole that whole 6 months, I was thinking about that 50 pounds I was going to be down. I was picturing myself on the beach, all this stuff. And it's like now that I got there and that isn't the reality, it feels like I've been cheated. I feel like something has been taken from me that I deserve. And again, human nature is very built on equity and justice. So it feels unfair. Hey, I did all this work. I didn't get what I was offered. I didn't get what I was supposed to get. I put in the long nights and the early mornings for my business. I've been doing this entrepreneur 7 days a week grind. Why haven't I received my check yet? And because of that, that ends up being justification to then quit. Right? I said earlier that the only way you fail is if you stop doing it. So when we have this unjust feeling, this feeling of, hey, I did the work, I should have gotten my result, my brain goes, okay, that's not fair. We don't do unfair things because, again, energy, we're not going to keep spending energy on a result that we aren't getting. We have to quit. Now it's not like, oh, I'm giving up. It's like, I tried, but now I have to quit because it's just not working.
Yeah, I love that. And I honestly, it's like you're speaking to me of, let's say, 5, 10 years ago. I was like that. And not even with 6 months. I would do something for a month and be like, oh, I'm not seeing the results I was not realistically set for myself to begin with. And what's interesting, thinking back as well as to touch on what you just said, is the idea that you're telling you with your conscious mind, you're saying, okay, this is my expectations, or maybe not even like that. This is what I want out of it. And then to your subconscious mind, you keep repeating that. So you're always going to look for that. Like you said, it's an expectation that you maybe didn't realize you set, but it's going to essentially sabotage you all the way because your target is set, which means you're going to miss everything that's in your peripheral vision and behind you and everything else because you're only looking in one direction.
Right, exactly. And it makes everything else that potentially could still be a great result seem like failure, right? If I do A, then I'll get B. But C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z are options too, but that you're ignoring and it feels like failure, right? So again, same example. I set off on a goal to lose 50 pounds. I only lost 10 pounds. Seems like failure, but I'm forgetting about the friends I made at the gym along the way. I'm forgetting that I can breathe better now and that my knees hurt less. I'm forgetting that I've been eating healthier. And even though I haven't lost as much weight, my internal organs are much healthier. I'm throwing all of that stuff away because, again, I had that one picture of what success looks like in my head, and that's pigeonholed me into that. And exactly like you said, you're putting blinders on. So, this is, again, when I talk about like, how do I help people? It's just talking through this stuff and helping people see this stuff. Right. And this is, again, why you just said, okay, like I'm talking to you 5 years ago. And there's a reason anyone listening to this or watching this can sit and nod their head. And it's like I said in the beginning, because this is human stuff. This is me. I have gone through all of this. My girlfriend goes through it. My friends go through it. My parents go through it. My sister goes through it. Every client I've ever worked with goes through this stuff. And that's the point, is that this is not just about any one goal. This is not about any one thing. This is just human nature. And so I don't think that there's any upper limit to how important this stuff is, because the better we can understand human nature, the better chance we have at actually going, oh, okay, this is what's happening right now. Let me not fall for this, right? Let me not, oh, okay, I see it. Oh, this is just me being afraid of the unknown. Oh, this is just me wanting to stay with the status quo rather than face change. There was before I told you I was a personal trainer for a long time. I also managed the gym. So I had, I was both a trainer and managing the gym. It was a good job. It was a great facility. They loved me. I was there for almost 10 years. And then I had this idea to leave the gym and go travel and just pack up my car and leave. And I was going to, keep doing my podcast. But, I had these two things and I was weighing the pros and cons. And on the one side, I had this great job. I had clients that I loved. It was a job I enjoyed. I enjoyed training people. I had a gym, I had a facility that was a family owned facility. They had been with me for the last 10 years. They took great care of me and all this stuff. And then I was, and I was, on the other hand, I had this trip and it was betting on myself and going off on my own. And I found myself trying to talk myself into keeping the job. And again, it's health insurance. It's a good job. Why give up something that's so good? And it was that exact thought pattern that I caught, and I was like, oh, I have to leave. And I quit my job that day because that was me trying to trick myself into staying the same because staying the same felt like safety to me. But only through all of the work that I had done for years and years was I able to catch myself in that moment and go, oh, this is what's happening right now. Like anyone else or myself in the past or most of the time, I would have just been like, yeah, it makes sense. Stay at the job. Like who would give that up? That makes perfectly logical sense to do that. But what I was doing was tricking myself. And only through years and years of work and all of the stuff that I'm doing was I able to, in that one brief glimmer of a moment, catch myself. And I mean, the story is still being written. I'm recording this from a closet right now because that's what I've been doing since I quit my job, is traveling. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But again, I at least had to be aware, educated, and that was the action step. But I couldn't get there without the awareness. I couldn't get there without the education.
Exactly, because if you weren't aware of what could possibly happen on a psychological level, you wouldn't catch yourself and you'd still be in the job. It would be a different conversation. And I love what you touched on there, because what you just said is that you finally allowed your heart to have a say in what you do versus just your mind, your ego, your brain that's working to protect you, but it doesn't necessarily have your best interest in mind from the heart point of view. Because you want to do things that make you feel alive, that make you feel like you have a purpose in life. At least that's how I am and how I've seen others do. But the brain gets in the way because, like you said, it wants to protect you, it wants to conserve energy, it wants to maintain the status quo. And I love the example you gave and what you're doing right now. And I know the story is going to unfold beautifully because you're following your heart.
Yeah, and that's a very important point that you just made too. Is like all of that stuff that I've talked about, from maintaining the status quo, fear, psychological safety, all of this stuff comes from a place of love, actually. This is your brain trying to protect you. Your brain is not trying to make you gain weight by eating more Oreos than salad. But Oreos taste better and hit those pleasure centers in your brain that tell it this is a better food for me. Your brain is not trying to make you get weak and frail when you are addicted to Netflix or TikTok instead of going to the gym. But in that moment, it's giving you dopamine, and that's what your brain thinks. So all of this stuff comes from a place of your brain is always trying to protect you. Your brain is always trying to do what's best for you. It's just that, again, there's a mismatch between what's actually best for you because all of that is short-sighted. Your brain is doing what's best for you in this moment right now.
Yes.
Your life were to end 5 seconds from now, then eating the Oreo over the celery would be the better choice because it gave you a little bit more dopamine, and that was the better choice. It gave you a little bit more happiness before your life ended, right? If you were living in a certain way, then you would need to make those choices. But your brain is operating on outdated software, right? It's operating on Windows 95, and we are living in an iOS 15 world, and that's kind of what's holding us back. But again, I think that's important because this is not like people can hear this stuff like, oh, why is it so hard? Why is my brain sabotaging me? Why am I sabotaging myself? Because you're trying to keep yourself safe. It all comes from a place of love. No one does harm on purpose to themselves or others, right? Like even unless you're like a sociopath, obviously there's an exception to every rule, but for the most part, any decision that I make comes from in some way a place of trying to better myself. It just backfires 99 out of 100 times. And if we think about it, again, it's because of the law where most of those decisions are trying to better myself short term rather than long term. And you can take this and extrapolate it out to how other people treat you as well. This is a big thing I talk to others about. It's like if someone anyone who talks to anyone or does anything with other people, it's like in some way in their head, they're doing the right thing. Right? Like whether, like whatever, if it's the girl who sits next to you in the office who's just weird, or someone at the bar who you didn't like, or whatever, it's like no one is out there just trying to be a shitty person on purpose. Their brain in some way is justifying everything. And like they think when they go home and you're having that conversation with your spouse, like, oh my God, they were such an asshole. They're going home with and having a conversation with their spouse, like, oh my God, I made this guy's day today. Like I totally helped him out. Like they really think that, and your brain is doing the same thing. Your brain thinks that right now in this moment, it's helping you, but that's why you have to be able to take a step back, right, with the awareness and see that, like, even though that's how it feels, even though logically I can see how that would be the truth, it's not actually what's happening here.
Yeah, so keeping an open mind, challenging yourself to find awareness in the situation and saying, okay, I'm doing this. I've been doing this for, let's say, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of my life. Is it the correct thing right this moment? Is it serving me and those around me? And when I started doing that and approaching it exactly like you mentioned, so many things came to light. But then the real work starts, because now you became aware, but like you said, without now getting some knowledge, which you may or may not have already, and then putting it into practice, nothing actually happens.
Right. Well, like you said, now the real work starts. That's why it's a loop, right? It always comes back to the beginning of like you get all this stuff and you get all the way there, and then you're like, oh crap, and then you just start over again. There's an old Buddhist parable that I really enjoy, where it's like this monk is climbing up the mountain, and he's climbing up, and he looks up through the sky up to the top of the mountain, and it's like through the clouds he can't even see it. It's just like his mountain. He's like climbing, and he keeps looking up, and he can't even see the top of the mountain. He keeps climbing. And finally, he breaks through the clouds and you can see the top of the mountain. And he keeps climbing days, weeks. And finally, he reaches the top of the mountain and he's so tired. And he stands up on the top of the mountain and he looks out. And what does he see? More mountains. And like, that's life. Like it's like you don't get to get off this ride. And people are like, oh, like it's so hard. This is so challenging. It's like, this is it. This is what you get. It's one thing after another, and that's why you've said this is why as you said, as I've said, why it coming from a place of love is so important, because it doesn't matter if you like it or not. It doesn't matter if you enjoy it or not. This is the reality. This is life right here. So make the most of it instead of trying to make life better. Make yourself better at life. Like just make yourself enjoy it more. You can't change that mountain that you're climbing. What you can change is, are you enjoying the climb or not?
Yeah. How you approach the climb, right? How you take every step, how you're keeping your eyes open and say, oh, maybe that path would be actually easier instead of just following the ladder up.
Right. Or just how exactly your perspective of it. Is this a chore, or is this a beautiful day with birds chirping and like, yes, it's hard on my body, but thank goodness I get to be out here and climb this mountain where so many people aren't so fortunate. It's all just perspective. And again, you can't change. There are certain things about that are rules of the universe that you can't change. You might not be able to change the situation that you're in right now, but you can change your perspective and how you look at it. And that will then allow you to change your actual situation in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And I know as we're coming up on the hour here, Paul, I wanted to ask you a question that I'm curious to see the answer to. If you could go back in time, any point in time, let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago, to a younger version of yourself, and of course, the age that many of the listeners are today or a point in life, what's one piece of advice you give yourself to help you on this path?
Honestly, it would be just to start sooner. Again, I feel that anyone who is on this journey will come to the conclusions that I've come to on my own. You have seemingly come to on your own, and everyone else who gets there will get there on their own. Because again, these are truths that are universal truths of the literal universe. But it takes time and energy and effort to get there. And I spent a lot of time dicking around and being a kid, which is fine. To be honest, I would never change anything about my life, because everything that happened in my life led me exactly to this point. Everything had to happen exactly the way it did for me to end up right here. So the good, the bad, the ugly. But for the sake of the question, that would be my answer, is just to start earlier. Like as a teenager, I wish I was reading these books. I wish I was doing this stuff rather than starting when I was 27 to kind of dive into this stuff.
Absolutely, Paul. And I love that because I would answer the same way. I don't want to change anything because it brought me to where I am today, it gave me the lessons I need. But it doesn't mean that those that are listening, that they were Paul 5, 10 years ago or Constantine 20 years ago, can't speed up that process, like you said, can't start earlier, can't become more aware of actually what's happening around them. So they don't have to spend time feeling lost and spend time researching all this stuff when the information is so readily available these days.
Yeah, 100%. That's time is our most valuable asset, right? So any time that I can save time for me or for others, and that's really what my podcast is. That's what a conversation like this is. This is what I'm so passionate about, what my courses do. It's just that. It's just me taking what took me decades to figure out and reading hundreds and hundreds of books and listening to thousands of hours of podcasts and going to all these courses and spending all this money. And it's just like, here's the stuff that you need to know, and distilling it down into more actionable steps that people can take right now and not 10 years from now.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of your podcast and the courses, let's tell people where they can find more, where they can talk to you, where they can read more, right? Take a course, or of course, listen to your podcast.
Yeah, of course. My podcast is what I'm most passionate about because that's where I can share the most and it's free and I can affect the most people. So my podcast is called Happy Healthy Human. It's anywhere podcasts are found. There's a couple hundred episodes at this point, all different topics. So if you like conversations like this, that's where I would point people. And if people wanted to connect with me directly, you could just look me up by my name, Paul Levitin, across all social media platforms. Instagram is where I'm most active. You can just DM me if you want to learn about courses, you want to learn about coaching or anything like that. Just say hi. I have a lot of free resources that I like to give away for people. Coaching isn't for everyone, but I want to be able to help even if it isn't. And for the people that are ready to really dive into this stuff, I have courses and I have coaching that I can offer as well.
Awesome, Paul. Well, I want to thank you for your time today. I've learned a lot, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it as well.
Thank you so much for being with us today. To find out more amazing content and episodes, please visit unleashthyself.com, or you can find us on social media.